Have you ever just stopped and wondered why some people who earn millions of dollars end up completely broke, while others, with really modest incomes, somehow retire as millionaires? It's a crazy paradox, right? It kind of suggests that when it comes to money, what you know on a spreadsheet is way less important than how you actually behave. So today, we're going to dive deep into the psychology of wealth and unpack 5 powerful truths that will probably challenge everything you think you know about getting and staying rich. Okay, so let's just start with 2 stories that could not be more different. On one hand, you've got Mike Tyson, one of the greatest boxers maybe ever. He earned over $400 million during his career. He bought mansions, exotic tigers, even a $2 million bathtub. But by 2003, he was bankrupt and $23 million in debt. Then, on the other hand, you have this guy, Ronald Reed. He was a janitor and a gas station attendant his entire life, drove a beat-up old car, lived a super quiet life. When he passed away at 92, he left behind an $8 million fortune. So this just begs the question, right? If financial success isn't strictly about how smart you are or your salary or even how hard you work, then what on earth is it really about? Well, the answer is all in our psychology. It's about your mindset, your behavior, and your relationship with things like greed, fear, and risk. All right, so let's get into it. We're going to explore 5 fundamental truths about the psychology of money. We'll kick things off with the invisible forces of luck and risk. Then we'll look at the huge difference between making money and keeping it. After that, we're going to totally redefine what saving is actually for, uncover the secret of invisible wealth, and finally get into why being reasonable with your money is so much better than being perfectly rational. First up is a truth that can be, it can be a little hard to swallow. We love to believe that all of our success comes from our own hard work and our brilliant decisions. But the reality is, you're not nearly as in control as you think. Because every single major success story you've ever heard has some element of luck or timing or just a fortunate circumstance that we almost always overlook. And on the flip side of that, every failure has an element of risk, some unpredictable event that could have derailed absolutely anyone, no matter how smart they were. The thing is, we tend to judge both success and failure with way, way too much certainty. This is just brilliantly illustrated by the story of a young Bill Gates and his best friend Kent Evans. They were both complete computer geniuses at one of the only high schools in the entire world that had a computer back in the 1960s. Talk about luck. They planned to conquer the world together. But Kent died in a mountaineering accident before they even graduated, a 1 in a million risk. Gates, of course, went on to build Microsoft. Would the world be different if Kent had lived? We'll never know. But it just shows you how powerful these outside forces can be. So the crucial point here is this. You have to acknowledge that you can't control everything. So instead of trying, just focus on making the best possible decisions with the information you actually have. Position yourself to get lucky by being open to opportunities and always build in a margin of safety for when risk inevitably shows up at your door. Okay, let's move on to our second truth, and you'll see how this builds. So many people master the game of getting rich, but they fail, often spectacularly, at the second and honestly more important game, staying rich. And that's because the skills required are polar opposites. Getting wealthy, that requires you to play offense. It's all about taking risks, starting that business, investing aggressively, betting on yourself. Think of Jeff Bezos quitting a cushy Wall Street job to sell books online. It's a totally optimistic mindset that sees opportunity and just takes these bold leaps. But staying wealthy, that is all about defense. It requires humility and, frankly, a healthy dose of paranoia. It's understanding that the same crazy risk-taking that made you rich can also make you poor again, just as fast. The goal shifts from trying to get huge returns to simply surviving and avoiding total ruin. This is the core philosophy of investors like Warren Buffett. He's famous for saying he hates losing money way more than he loves making it. And why is that? Because the absolute magic of compounding wealth, where your money earns money and then that money earns even more money, it only works if you can stay in the game long enough to let it do its job. Protecting your capital is everything. And we see this pattern everywhere, don't we? Figures like Mike Tyson, Nicolas Cage, and more recently Sam Bankman-Fried, they all made these incredible fortunes by taking huge risks, but they kept playing the same aggressive game, and they lost it all. Now compare that to someone like Buffett, who has played the long, defensive game for over 60 years and just keeps on compounding his wealth.
Okay, now for our third truth. And this one, for me, completely reframes the whole purpose of saving money. Most of us think we save up to buy things, a house, a car, a nice vacation. But what if the greatest thing you could ever buy wasn't a thing at all?
Because the real prize, the ultimate form of wealth, it isn't a luxury car. It's the ability to wake up every single morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. It's having control over your time. It's autonomy. It's freedom. And this leads to this great concept of the FU fund. Yeah, it's a blunt term, I know, but it is so powerful. It's having enough savings to just walk away from a toxic job, a terrible boss, or a bad living situation without having to panic about next month's rent. It is the financial power to just say no. And this is where we really redefine wealth, not in dollars, but in options. I mean, look at these points. Every dollar you save isn't just a number in a bank account. It's a little piece of your future freedom. It's the buffer that lets you handle a medical emergency without going into debt. It's the time to wait for a better job instead of just grabbing the first one that comes along. You're not just buying stuff, you're buying back your life, $1 at a time. This brings us perfectly to our fourth truth, one that really exposes a huge misconception in our society. We tend to think that wealth is about visible displays of spending. But true wealth, it's almost always hidden.
Okay, so imagine this. You see someone drive by in a brand new, shiny, $300,000 Ferrari.
Our immediate thought is, wow, that person must be incredibly rich. We see the car and we immediately assume we know their net worth. But what does that car actually tell us about their finances? The only thing we know for absolute certain is that their net worth is now $300,000 lower than it was right before they bought the car. Or, let's be honest, they probably have $300,000 more in debt. Spending money to show people how much money you have is literally the fastest way to have less money. And this is the key. Real wealth is invisible. It's the stocks you own, the retirement accounts that are quietly compounding, the financial assets you haven't turned into shiny objects. It's Ronald Reed, the janitor, quietly building an empire that nobody knew about. It's Warren Buffett living in the same modest house he bought back in 1958. Wealth isn't the stuff you buy, it's the freedom you've created. And that leads us to our final, and maybe the most important truth of all. We are not machines. Money isn't just math. It is deeply, deeply emotional. And the best financial plan is the one that actually acknowledges that we're human. And this slide just illustrates the difference perfectly. So on the left, you've got the rational plan. It looks perfect on a spreadsheet, right? It tells you to put 100% of your money in stocks because historically, that gives the highest returns. It assumes you'll behave like a robot. But on the right, you have the reasonable plan. This plan acknowledges that you're a person who's going to feel fear when the market crashes. So it builds in a cushion, maybe some cash or some bonds to help you sleep at night and, most importantly, keep you from panicking. This is the classic trap of the purely rational investor. The market tanks, and all that beautiful logic on their spreadsheet is just completely steamrolled by the raw emotion of fear. They sell everything at the absolute worst possible time, turning what was a temporary paper loss into a permanent, devastating one. They fail not because the plan was bad on paper, but because it wasn't designed for a real human being. So the crucial point here is this: find a strategy that is good enough and that you know you can stick with through thick and thin. Consistency is so much more powerful than chasing the absolute highest theoretical returns. The plan that lets you live in peace is the plan that's going to win in the long run. So, as we wrap up, let's just bring it all together and look at the 5 truths we've uncovered. First, your success isn't all you. You've got to acknowledge luck and risk. Second, staying rich is totally different from getting rich. You have to learn to play defense. Third, save for freedom, not just for things. You're buying back your time. Fourth, true wealth is what you don't see, so stop chasing appearances. And finally, be reasonable, not rational. Pick a plan you can actually stick with. You see, all these truths show us that financial success is less about what you know and way more about how you behave. It's a soft skill, not some hard science. So the final question, it's really for you. Knowing that your mindset is the biggest factor in all of this, what's the one belief you currently hold about money that you're now going to challenge? Really think about it, because that one little change could be the key to your entire financial future.